Hello and welcome to another model building workshop. And today we're going to be looking at, I'm not even sure I can say this one, but the Sd.Kfz 222 Leichter Panzerspähwagen 4x4. And if I murdered that, my apologies. So this is a German armored car and one that was used throughout the entirety of the Second World War. So that makes a lot of diorama possibilities for this vehicle because it functioned throughout the whole duration of the Second World War. So, and this is what she looks like built. This is an old Tamiya kit. I'm going to lay that flat on my hands here. So this is the old version of it. There is a newer version of this kit that has been marketed of late that has a photo etched screen. This is the old one that used vinyl, like some sort of vinyl mesh. But now the whole thing is done in a photo etch piece, or pieces I should say. So it's been repackaged and it's back out there on the market in that version. So this is what I did with it. Did this one in the typical Panzer Gray, but I decided to do it for the 20th Panzer Division. I wanted something slightly different than the options that Tamiya gives you. Tamiya and the old kits, they tended to give you pretty much the same handful of German Panzer units. That was about it. You had, I'll show you the instructions. You had a few choices to pick from, but now, you know, with all these decal sets that are out there and decal sheets, and there's so many options. And even the new boxings of some of these kits are giving you some other choices other than the same markings over and over again. So let's take a look at the instruction sheet with this. It's the vintage one. Now first thing you know is, oh my goodness, look at all of this itty bitty text. What is going on here? Well, that's the history of the vehicle, and this is done in, no, that entire thing is in English. That's a book. That's quite a history lesson there on this vehicle. So you can get a whole lot out of that. If I can give you a handful of things out of this, because this thing goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. I'm not saying it's not interesting. I'm just saying it's very thorough. So it looks like these were, started out in the 1930s. Looks like the production, I think, ceased in 1942. But they continued in service, like I said, throughout the war. And wow, yeah, it goes on here. Then it had a 20mm gun in this version, and there's other offshoots of this vehicle as well that had radio equipment. One had a machine gun and a radio on it, so there's different types. But this is the 222, which is kind of the eyes and ears of a Panzer division. But this one's got the 20mm gun, so it can, it can fight its way out of a little fender bender kind of situation. If it runs into an issue, it has some firepower to try to fight its way out. And here's what we're talking about for the decal options that tended to be typical of the kits in the earlier days of Tamiya. So you have naturally the Africa Corps. So you had the 15th Panzer Division and the 21st Panzer Divisions. They made up the Africa Corps, or the armored punch of the Africa Corps. And so you have those two divisions. You have the Großdeutschland division with the helmet design there, which was a sort of like the who's who, or the best of, or something like that, of the German army. They tended to recruit soldiers throughout all of Germany, thus the name Großdeutschland, of all Germany. It wasn't like a regional division where a lot of these divisions were, like the 2nd Panzer Division, for example, was formed out of Austria, out of Vienna, I believe. In different ones, like I think it was the 3rd Panzer Division came out of Berlin and tended to have the Brandenburg Gate or the Berlin Bear emblem, etc., etc. The 23rd Panzer Division tended to be pulled from troops that were in France, stationed in France, and they tended to use the Eiffel Tower as an unofficial emblem. Anyhow, so you get the idea. These different divisions. You also get the 5th Panzer Division, which was the X. That's kind of an interesting one, but that does show up in other kits. And you've got a couple of the SS units, the Waffen SS, the 1st SS Division and the 2nd one. And of course you get the Africa Corps emblem as well. And then you get a few other choices here for an armored vehicle unit, a motorcycle infantry battalion, a tank reconnaissance battalion, or an HQ vehicle. And that's what these down here are for. So it gives you a pretty good layout of where these things go for different painting choices. And they don't say much about where these are, other than the ones that are in Africa. The others, they just say, are in Europe, which is kind of generic. So we do know that Großdeutschland was pretty much spent like the bulk of its time in the Eastern Front in Russia. 5th Panzer Division as well, although the 5th Panzer Division was also involved in the Balkans, so that's a possibility. If you're doing a diorama with one of these vehicles, you could send it in the battles in Greece. And that's the same situation for the 1st SS Panzer Division, which was, again, that tended to go everywhere. But a lot of these cars and the photographs show them, in the battles for Greece. So I think I made a short story long there for some people, but if you're a decal nerd like I am, you might find that interesting. Okay, so let's have a look at the instruction sheet, which has the parts breakdown there, which tends to be handy to have that. Something that's interesting here, for the mesh that they had then, you had these diagrams here, which you would have to put the mesh over and cut to shape, and then those pieces would fit into the spaces on those panels that go on the top. And basically what they were for, that was anti-grenade netting. So if they threw a grenade, it would hopefully bounce off and not into the vehicle. So offer some protection. So you have pretty standard assembly, and this is not a bad one to build. In fact, I had kids at the library work on these recently at the Smith Hill Library, and they did okay with it. Of course, they had a few model kits under their belts. That does help. I wouldn't recommend this for a novice, but someone that's done a few models should be able to handle this one. You got the gun assembly there. Now, this kit has a few drawbacks, and one of them is that there's really no interior. They just show the very basic seats and the gun platform. There's no driver's station. There's really nothing inside the car. The real one doesn't have a whole lot in it either, really, but there would be something in there. So there's not much there, and I'm assuming that newer manufacturers in recent years that have built their versions of this vehicle have probably done more with the interior than the Tamiya one did. Let's see what else we got here. I think that's pretty much it for the construction. Yeah, and it can give you a figure, which could go. I didn't use it, but there is a figure that you can put in there. Because I opted to have the hatches closed. So I find these to be a lot of fun. Fun little vehicle. There's things that, like I said, that could be improved. For example, there is this grate up on top, which you probably would get that in a photo etch piece now to show these air intakes. I would gather that they would do that now on other manufacturers. But there's a lot of nice angles and shapes here. So there's a lot you can paint and detail. So the underneath doesn't have a whole lot going on, but it's got some stuff down there. Another drawback, I guess, is that the wheels, you know, they rotate, but they don't turn. So if you wanted to pose this turning, you'd have to do some surgery to do that. And I think that's possible, but perhaps other manufacturers are making it so that you can do that. We can look at the parts here. Let me get at this. So generally what I do with these kits is I do a photocopy of the illustrations here for cutting the masks. Yeah, to put the screens in. It's been a long day. Sorry, folks. So I make extras so that you can do the cutting there. This is an old kit that has the old catalog still in it, which is kind of cool. Do a brief detour here. Let's see what else is going on. I love these old kits that have these things in it. It's fun to look back. Not all of these kits are still in production, so it's kind of neat to look at them. Don't want to digress too much here, but it is kind of cool. Okay, so moving on, which on is only a two-letter word, so moving on is not that difficult, really, if you think about it. Anyhow, so you get your parts in the overall Panzer gray color for this. Your decal sheet, and here's that mesh that you're going to need to cut for the screens. Now, the interior tub, as you can see, it's pretty lacking of detail. The doors you could open if you wanted to, although there's nothing to really see inside, but the possibility is there on this kit if you wanted to do that. Not much in there either. We have all the fender pieces. There's a string which you can use for a tow cable. A lot of things there. Get too crazy putting that back in. I think there's an option on this one for, before I get carried away on that, but I think you got some options on how you want to design the front of the vehicle. Let me make sure I'm not hallucinating with that. If it says anything here, actually it doesn't, but there is this this rack. Looks like smoke dischargers on the front, which I don't think are required. I think if you look at historical references, you'd see that that isn't necessarily, there. I can show you some pictures of some of that in just a moment. Yeah, it doesn't really mention it. But I think you've got some choices on how you want to set that up. I think there's also an option for the Yeah, right. If I can find it now. Like I said, it's been a long day. No, I guess not. Well, yeah. It's not really there, but it's something else that I know. So the rear deck of for the engine has a solid piece there, which fits the national emblem pretty nicely. I don't think it's always on these things. I think you can take that thing off and just have the vents of the engine there. And these plates that are on the wheels, on the rims there, I don't think are necessarily on all of them either. If you look at photographs, you'll probably notice that. So, sorry. Kaplunky. So if you look at a 2021 Tamiya catalog, you will see, go too far into the book, that is, you will see of course I just had this a second ago, yeah, that the kit is back out there, and you'll notice this is the one that has the photo etch screens, which are much thinner, smaller, and probably more realistic into scale. And you have two variants of it here. You have the gray one is still, this one here that I built is pretty much still as is, but with that new photo etch part. And then you have this new set here in the Africa Core version. Comes with a motorcycle and some other features. And they also still make the other car, which is the 223. If I can get this thing to cooperate with me here. Yeah, it's hard to see that, but which is a radio version. Although you can do it without the radio if you wanted to, because they did do it that way as well. And that's another kit. And that's been upgraded with the photo etch as well. So, one thing that's fun about these is that because they went through the entire war, there's many different ways of painting these. So you could do it for the Battle of Poland all the way through till the very end of the fall of Berlin. And you can even do it for other nations, such as Bulgaria. This is a fascinating book if you're really into weird, I shouldn't say weird, but unusual topics, because there's not much on Bulgaria. And I find it kind of fascinating if you want to do it, because it shows Bulgarian versions there. As an example. And this series of books I highly recommend. The Panzer Color series is 1, 2, and 3. Ironically, red, yellow, green, like a stoplight. But yeah, this is a pretty nice one. And here you go. You get some idea right off the bat of what you can do with that. Winterized version. Well, winter painted version. As to whether that's any warmer, more comfortable, probably not. But you get a lot of ideas in books like this and different ways you could paint it. If you're doing dioramas, I mean, these things are just so valuable for the ideas of armored cars, different types. Armored car, or as we say here in New England, armored car. And here's a 223 over here. That's nicely winter camouflaged. So, anyway, these things are, gray. They're the desert colors. They end up in 2-tone and 3-tone with the dark yellow, with the greens and the browns. Pretty much any kind of paint scheme, you could do it with this and put it in pretty much any battlefront that the Germans are in World War II. So there's a lot of possibilities there. And lastly, just wanted to look at If I can get this to cooperate with me. And of course I'm not. Bear with me for a second, I know. Probably should pause this, but let me pause this. So yeah, this was a Squadron mail catalog back in the day. And you can see on this page that there were several versions by Hobby Boss that I'm interested in seeing how these things look, including this one down here. So there are other manufacturers working on this topic. Yeah, this was from 2019 before this company went out of business, but now it's back with a different owner, but they are back, although you don't get this fun catalog at the moment. But anyway, so that's perhaps a long-winded look at the 222 Armored Car. Well, keep on building, and hope the new year's going well for you, and we'll see you soon on the next episode. All right, bye everybody. Have a good one.